Show them.
Alright, 2 minutes to cover Peace and War Times. This is part 2 of the Black Book 2 is Plagiarized. Alright, let's start with number 70. So who would Joseph be amongst the Hyksos? Joseph would be Apepi, the first Apophis as a Hyksos demon. He was probably named Apepi the first Joseph ben Jacob, Joseph to add on, defeated in 1585 BC, worshiper Setut, Set or Baal. This Apophis or Poppy, which means giant serpent, some call white Syrians. These even human beings called Hyksos started a feud with the indigenous people of the land. Poppy wanted them to kill and destroy all the holy hippopotamus, which was a symbol of the deity Taweret, or Taweret, which the Greeks call Eris. The word hippopotamus means seahorse, the shape of all of Africa, the horse head. All right, let's jump to 86. The Pharaoh Kamos helped inaugurate Egypt. However, he speaks of the Asiatics as having destroyed Egypt due to the complaint of Apepi I to Sekenre Tao, the Aferte Pharaoh of New Amun, Thebes, that he was unable to sleep in Avaris because of the roaring of the hippopotamus 400 miles away at New Amun, Thebes. This created war, and the Theban dynasty rose up against the Hyksos in a series of battles which eventually drove out the Hyksos out of Egypt. I'm going to jump to 92 and 93. All right, Tara held the Sa, symbol of protecting justice best. So they claimed that the snoring of the hippopotamus was unseemly noisy in the sacred temple pool at Thebes. They said that King Poppy, who slept 400 miles away, could not sleep. All right, so remember this came out in I think 99, or it was written in 99, but it didn't come out till later. So again, we finna show you where he copied and pasted and added a little bit more to it. Look what it says. All right, this is coming out of Bible Interpretations, Book 1, letter L. 21 through 25. Who was Moses by race and religion? Moses was Phoenician. The Phoenicians were called Hebrew before the Jews adopted the terms. The Phoenicians were not original Egyptians, but a people who had supplanted the Ethiopians of Egypt in much the same way that the Jews, other Greeks, and the Romans supplanted the Phoenicians. The Phoenicians originally came from Asia and were invaders of Egypt themselves around 3000 BC. Moses was a ruler of Egypt, and his title was Thutmose I. He was the beginning of the Moon Dynasty in Egypt around 1600 BC. Moses was the incarnation of the moon god Thoth, also called Sin and Hermes, and his magic wand was the Caduceus. Sinai, the mount that Moses was supposed to have raised so often, means Mount of Sin, that is the moon. That mount is the Great Pyramid at Giza, Egypt. The religion of Moses was pantheism. Moses came to power in Egypt during the time that the Jews who were ruling in Lower Egypt started warring with the Egyptians who were ruling Upper Egypt. It will help the reader to understand better if he or she remember that there were two Egypts, Upper and Lower Egypt. The time of the latter-day pharaohs, the Phoenician pharaohs, a king could rule Upper Egypt while another ruled Lower Egypt. This was the case with the Jews and Egyptians. Since Moses was king of Egypt, why did the Jews take him as their divine leader and hero? After the Jews invaded Egypt around 2000 BC, they ruled the Egypt closer to the Mediterranean for several hundred years. History calls these invaders the Hyksos. but the Egyptians called them white Syrians. The title of their king was Poppy, meaning the serpent. Around 1600 BC, the Egyptians were ruling Upper Egypt, started feuding with the Jews who ruled in Lower Egypt because Poppy, the king and pharaoh, the Jews wanted the Egyptians to destroy a hippopotamus that kept bellowing at night and thereby disturbing its rest. The Egyptians refused, for they believed that certain animals were incarnations of certain gods and that hippopotamus was one of their sacred animals. A war broke out between the Jews and the Egyptians over this disagreement, and during this time Moses came to power in Upper Egypt at Thutmose I. The Jews were getting military help from Asia. Therefore, Thutmose realized that he could not win the war unless the Egyptians got foreign help too. As a result, Moses went to Ethiopia to solicit help, and the Ethiopians responded favorably. It was customary in those days to seal an agreement by taking a mate as a wife or concubine. Hence, it's written that Moses married an Ethiopian woman, Numbers 12 chapter 1 verse, and this sealed the agreement between Egypt and Ethiopia. Moses' wife, it is written, was called Zipporah, Exodus 18 chapter 2nd verse. Thutmose defeated Poppy after a hard struggle, but instead of giving the Jews the treatment of aggressors, Thutmose chose to act as a protector for the Jews by treating them like brothers and allowing them to migrate back to Asia with the aid of the Egyptian army. Exodus 12 chapter 38 verse. Moreover, he gave the Jews provision and supplied them with priests and teachers. Thutmose reacted that way because he was an incarnation of the moon god Sin, same as Thoth, Hermes, Siva, who had extracted the Jews from the Hindu people. Egypt took over all of Western Asia after Thutmose defeated the Jews in Egypt. For Egypt then became a warlike and conquered nation. The foregoing answers the base of the Jews' divine exodus from Egypt. Therefore, the Egyptians did not oppress the Jews in Egypt. St. John 8 chapter 33rd verse. It was the Jews oppressing the Egyptians. So, once again, for those who got access to the books, if you don't have access to these books, the AFROO OONOO, get in contact with me and we can make something happen for you. All right, so here, once again, this AFROO OONOO wrote about Poppy and all this in 67, 68. York come over 30 years later and basically copied the whole story again and just added some stuff that you could basically look up what was going on with the pharaohs that York named, but you can see the story in there. All right, so, these are the lies that he likes to tell. Let me see. All right, we're talking about their time. All right, so we said they claimed that the snoring of the hippo was okay. We got down here. The Hyksos gave up. The war was over. They were chased across the burning sands, and they're producing more problems than they're solving. So again, when Thutmose I defeated the Hyksos Jews, they were not chased across the burning sands. He changed that part. AFROO mentioned that Thutmose I escorted them back to Asia. Some stopped off in Judea and stayed there all the way up to the time of Josephus and all that stuff, and to the time that the temple was destroyed in 70 AD. So this happened around when they was fighting the Hyksos around 1600 BC. And so you're talking about, about 1,000-some years later. But Thutmose is the one that escorted them back to Asia. That's why they named him. They took his name. Again, he had an Egyptian name, I can't remember right now, but Thutmose is how they translate it. And so they took the Thoth off the Mose and made Moses out of it. All right, so it says they are producing more problems than they are solving up until 2000 BC, the end of their 6,000 year rule, from 4004 BC down to 1 AD on to 2000 BC. That is 6,000 years in all. So first of all, this right here is a typo. It should say 2000 AD. All right, but we finna deal with that time as well because again, I told you York was playing games with this information. So let's go to a Facebook post that I did, and here it says 1962 or the year 2000. Who was telling the truth? Nupu through AFROO OONOO said 1962 was the end of the moon cycle, and Aliens through Partner Bar, Mr. York said 2000 AD. The Black Book 2 verse Introduction to the Nature of Nature. All right, so we click on here. Again, we asked this 2015. So this is 9 years ago. All right. Right? 15, 5 more years, make it 2020, then 4 more years. About 9 years ago. Let's look at this. How much time did we have? A mere half of a minute in years. 30 years was needed from 1970 to 2000, the end of the 6,000 year reign of the Luciferians, Satan, Satan, Shaitan, Leviathan, Beelzebub, Master of Filth, Lord of Flies, the human serpent, lipless snake people, and now I can begin the great work of the second half of the minute in years to the year 2030, the Reformation as the purifier, setting the record straight of renewing our story, resurrecting the mentally dead, the sleeping gods. Okay, once again, this is false because Leviathan, if you go back and look at the Black Book, is Plagiarized Part 1. And matter of fact, the Part 1, 2, and 3 of Leviathan is a sex force. The books already explain, even our ancestors, Kemet, knew that Apophis or Apep or Leviathan was a sex force. And it was a giant snake that they knew went around the whole world. So what you see what Tahuti did through York was make Luciferians into, this case, he's saying the human serpent. And then he's taking it from being what Leviathan really is to now he's trying to label the Caucasian all these different names. But we already went through those last videos that was explaining what Leviathan is. And he's adding these things in here to try to confuse you. All right, so then it goes on, I am appointed by the force of nature to determine and disclose to the people, which is another lie. All right, so he's telling y'all that the year 2000 was the end of the moon cycle. The hidden path, the changing person, the ruling future. The change, that should be present. That's a typo. What is the meaning of nature? Nature is from the Latin natura or natus, to be born. So nature birthed me at the right place at the right moment in time to fulfill the mission of renewing our story. I came not to change the truth, but to fulfill the truth. Time is revolved. Revolution. It's time for you to renew your history, our story. Once again, he's telling lies. All right, so now we finna go into the nature books because we already have declared from not only the Bible interpretation, but even York had to put out a book and actually had to admit that AFROO OONOO was the actual writer and bringer of what is called the Nawapu, which you can find that in the Bible interpretation, 1967-68, and the Nine-Ball Counts, 1971 and 1972. So now we finna go and show how the nature books supports that 1962 was the end of the moon cycle, okay? All right, so listen to reason, the year this book was written, Caucasian Christian year 1994 is the year 5,688,032 in the annals of history of the Ethiopian race and its ancestry plus universe biography. The meaning of the ciphers, digits, and letters follows. The universe of almighty nature originated 5,688,000,000 no thousands, no hundreds and 32 years ago. All right, and the ancestors of the kinky head race came along with the universes of eternal nature as flesh and blood gods and goddesses who would never cease to exist in one formula and form or another, and also as gods and goddesses on the other hand, top half of existence circle. And human beings, on the other hand, bottom half of the same circle until the universe expire. In the noon Ethiopian year, 72 million years from Caucasian Christian year 1962 for short abbreviation, let it be known. Listen to reason. African history years may be shortened or abbreviated like noon Ethiopian year 032 or noon Ethiopian year 32, which is the same as Christian year 1994. NEY 32. Following years may be abbreviated NEY 33, NEY 34, NEY 35, etc., because these terms are short for the very long expression like 005 billion, 688 million, etc., each time that the smash circular order makes complete rotation, beginning at point 3 south on the perimeter of the order circle shown in this paragraph. It's the Ethiopian race history starts all over again and does this 80 times 72 million years before the universe do start to disintegrate. Therefore, from 1962 to the same time in Christian Caucasian year 1994 is 32 years that the Ethiopian race history has experienced beginnings all over again. So remember, see, York said our history supposed to be renewed in the year 2000. Which is a lie, because the nature books and the Bible interpretation already said that 1962 was the end and the starting over. To put it another way, if a person refers to all rotations of all Ethiopian history time, he must use NEY 5,688,032 years. But if one refers to our new beginning years, she may use NEY 32 or whatever the year might be for date time since the new beginning. Let it be remembered, always let it be known. So if you get down here, it said the world of the, okay, listen to reason. The Caucasian Christian year 1962 marks the end of the moon cycle, which is the end of the evolutionary cycle. All right, so when you start looking at all of this, you have to ask yourself, why did York tell these lies? You see what I'm saying? You have to ask yourself, why is he saying that 2000 was the year? And he gave, he pushed it, the time as far as verbally and writing, he pushed it and said it was 30 years later. But it's obviously that that's not true. The cycles of nature can interlap and overlap each other to the extent that they are interrelated. Christian Caucasian year 1962 signifies the end of the world of the moon cycle. Orb scientists see the planets, the moons and the sun. The orb scientists, right, the Ennead, the supreme mental forces of knowledge and power in the universes chose the year 1962 Caucasian year for the end of the moon and evolutionary cycle. Because first of all, it was a 9 year? A year when all its digits add up to 9 this way. 1 plus 9 plus 6 plus 2 equals 18, and 1 plus 8 equals 9. This is very important. All right, so it's very clear that York is telling lies. See, he said the 1960s were not the world catastrophe which is yet to come, and B, following the end of evolution. Then two certain star movements in the sky in 1962, that would be February 4th and February 5th, Caucasian Christian year signify major cycle changes for better after the worst of Armageddon is over. So things will not get better until after the worst of Armageddon is over. All right? The survivors of Armageddon are the positive in the future person, things on Mother Goddess Earth, and by extension everywhere else. So this is why people like York members being removed. Nature Boy, Jamal, Rashad Jamal, Pharaoh lost his mind. They ain't put him in jail. Brother Polite, you got all these other people that are not a black who are being removed. The other ones that still out here would not survive Armageddon. And the race war is already being started now with all these people coming into the country, and so-called black conscious people is sitting up here just looking dumb. Don't even know what they think that nothing's gonna happen to them. Listen to reason. Of course, Armageddon is, look, the climax of war between the old outdated ways of what? The moon cycle, and the new and updated ways of the sun cycle, which is the beginning of the Libra cycle. The word Libra is short for liberation. This writer stated in the previous nature information that we are all still at rock bottom of the smart circular order. The smart circle is the same as the existing circle, although we have all moved some 32 years forward in time from what? The end of evolution. It is so that we are considered to still be at rock bottom of the circle for the next 6,000 years, minus the 32 years already spent. But that 6,000 years will be upward moving for the better in standards and qualities and values in absolute almighty nature. You see? So we finished with that particular thing. So once again, bringing this up 9 years again to show y'all that not only was your plagiarizing, he done made y'all fools think that the moon cycle just ended 24 years ago, and the moon cycle ended 62 years ago. So you can see that he's a liar, because Tahuti done possessed him with Leviathan, and nothing he says makes any sense. Okay? This just showing y'all he cannot be, you can't listen to nothing this idiot says. All right, so let's go back again and say up until 2000 BC, the end of that rule from 4004 BC. All right, so let's look into where this fool took this from. All right, so we're gonna go to the Nature Book 1. All right. It said, this Nature Book 1, number 100. Listen to reason. Who people call Jesus today is the earth god known in ancient times by different names like Bacchus, the wine god, and this is why Jesus was called a wine bibber in the Caucasian Bible. His first miracle was turning water to wine. Like the god Osiris, the god Bacchus is a part and member of the earth god. Jesus was also known in ancient times by names like Gizis, Giza, Isa, Esau, Jasil, Gabathe, Sobek, Dagon, Geb, Neptune, Poseidon, Panthera, Ligba, Vishnu, Lord, and so on. The letter J is interchangeable with and can take the place of the letter G and vice versa. The letters G, E combined in this manner means earth or pertaining to earth, who people call Jehovah today is the moon god known in ancient times by various names like Yahweh, Java, Thoth, Mercury, Sin, Siva, Shiva, Ogun, Lord, etc., etc. The letter J is sometimes interchangeable with the letter Y, the rod of Moses that turned to a serpent, and the serpent that was held up in the wilderness in the Old Testament, the Caucasian Bible, are the caduceus of the moon god Mercury, used as a symbol of care and cure in the medical profession, even today as well as in ancient times. The moon cycle started with the advent of the history of Adam and Eve, 4004 BC, according to the Caucasian annals, and according to the Nature Universe Science, it was predestined by nature to last 6,000 years. Let it be remembered, always let it be known. So this number can also be found. Let me see if I can still pull this up. Here. All right, if you look up a guy named James Ussher, the world born in 4004 BC, question mark. All right, so with this guy here, he was born in 1581, died 1656. The famous and respected Archbishop of Ireland in the 17th century is today greatly ridiculed for declaring that the world was created in 4004 BC. which is true. It was not, right? However, this date was widely accepted until people began to believe in these ideas such as billions of years of Earth history. In other words, they started trusting in the latest secular findings based on fallible dating methods instead of the only absolute reliable method consulting the history book provided by the eyewitness account, the infallible Word of God. So he said, Usher also argued that day one of creation was October the 23rd. On the surface, this doesn't seem a bit extreme to suggest such a specific date, but one studies that Usher did one quickly realize he was a brilliant scholar who had very good reason for his conclusion concerning the date of creation. All right, so he said that creation started October 23rd, 4004 BC. All right, so when you go into all this other stuff, it just gives you more history. But the point is, Tahuti gave him the correct date as far as the Adam and Eve being kicked out of the gardens of Africa and Asia to the Asian islands. All right, and the Gulf of Aden. All right, so again, you have to really look at this stuff and say, why are y'all so mentally dead? And we've been debating y'all for a long time, you know, about York and his plagiarism. And you can see it's purely that, because a lot of y'all can go on Scrib and look and go get the book and download it, the book, the Black Book 2, and you can clearly read for yourself. It came strictly from the BIA. So we not, again, before I end it off, let's just make sure, you know, let's give the proper respect to AFROO OONOO, because y'all had to put out a book and y'all tried to be quiet. Now see, it's funny because look, it got March 20th, 2015 on this book cover. And when I was asking them all these questions, look, it said May 2nd, 2015. So they end up putting out a book in the same year that's giving AFROO OONOO credit. All right, so we're gonna do this before we end it off. We're gonna bring his picture back up. Since Earl, like they always keep asking about why J.E.B. Johnny Eugene Brown didn't talk about this, why he didn't talk about that, when he should be asking himself, why is your slave master teacher, sex offender, kept stealing from this man's work and pretending to be him? They saw us the year 2000 that what I began to teach was unlike any other black leader. So they watched and waited to see if it was Wu Sabat. They knew about the Wapu of AFROO OONOO. All right, so the whole thing is we keep asking these questions that y'all can't seem to answer, why your supreme sex offender doing 135 years was taking other people's information and disrespecting the black man, the one that nature truly brought to bring forth the information and put it out there, only for this clown to come years later after he got ran out of New York because them Arabs was about to put them bombs on his chest. He got up out of there and then switched over and to who the guided him to what AFROO OONOO Works was, and then they start pimping it in the Right Knowledge series and brought him a bunch of money, but he also confused everybody for a long time. All right, so I just wanted to make that part known, and we're gonna see you on the next go round. True Mythicology, peace and noontime.